welcome to another round of Defeasible Reasoning. My name is Professor Andrew Rosema, broadcasting to you sort of live from the Media Center studios at the Grand Rapids Center for Cybersecurity Studies here on the 53rd floor. With me today, Jim Schuyler from, are we allowed to say from U.S. Signal?
You are.
From U.S. Signal in an official capacity.
Ooh.
So we can't ask him any of the really interesting questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Here to talk about cybersecurity, networking, and what it is they do over there at U.S. Signal, in case you're curious. So, Jim, please tell me a little about yourself. How'd you get into the business? How'd you wind up talking at DEF CON?
Oh, boy. Oh, man. So I got into the business the way a lot of young people do. I started in a junior administration position with the Grand Rapids Public Library. I was then picked up in the Network Operations Center at U.S. Signal, where I started my illustrious career, as I know it now, doing everything from network maintenance, moving into position doing cloud support, and then eventually engineering, and then eventually assisting our pre- and post-sales teams.
Everybody loves the sales guys.
Oh, they do, don't they?
They make the cash register.
So now my title is Senior Architect with the Professional Services team.
Gotcha. So you design buildings then?
Oh boy, yeah, the lowercase a, uppercase a thing. I didn't pick the title, everyone.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
No, I'm happy to design solutions for our services team to support our customers.
Cool. And I wasn't kidding. So there was a story I heard once that maybe you did a presentation about something with Africa.
I did. No, I did. In my early 20s, so I have long family ties to Uganda, specifically rural Uganda. My godparents are there. They met my parents when my parents were living in Pennsylvania, and I was baptized by my godfather, and I wound up just kind of maintaining, of course, familiar relations, and found that there were some needs in the area as far as distribution of some technology, some laptops to NGO workers. People just needed basic tech support, and I had an opportunity and a sort of a gap where I was able to go over and help for a few months.
What was the most significant thing that you sort of got from that trip?
Malaria.
That's rather significant.
No, that's I did, but way beyond that, I think what I really recognized was that IT services were becoming important no matter where you were, and I had been very much on the fence. I didn't really see myself as a tech worker. I didn't see myself having really a future in IT. Wasn't something that I really decided on, and it became clear that that was something that I could help with no matter where I was. So that was a good opportunity. Plus, I just I got to see a lot of family and meet a lot of new friends. So it was a good experience. Except for the malaria.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Did they give you pills beforehand?
Yeah, they sure did. Actually, this is off the topic at hand, but if you are traveling abroad and your doctor provides you with a malarial prophylaxis, so I had been on one that you were supposed to take a week before you leave on one of my previous trips. On this specific trip, I was supposed to start taking it 2 weeks in advance. I didn't, because I assumed they were the same. So I flew over basically with no protection and pretty much immediately got sick.
So that sounds like RTFM?
Very much RTFM. Yeah, there was, the problem was between pill bottle and chair.
Gotcha. Not the medication itself.
Yeah, no, this is not the fault of the medication. And if you get really sick, by the way, they give you something called Aronate, which is almost worse for your body than the malaria. So,
Yeah, so don't get malaria.
Don't do that. That's really the takeaway. There we go. Thanks for the podcast.
Okay, see ya.
News you can use here on Defeasible Reasoning.
Don't do that.
If you do travel to someplace where you could get malaria, try not to. So I try to ask a couple of questions about stuff going on in the news that I think people in the not IT world might be curious about. And one of the things that's been going on that I think your business can speak to specifically is this whole BGP hijacking, right?
Backpacking.
Yeah, backpacking.
Right.
And so for the uninitiated, BGP is how the internet decides where to send your traffic. It's the Border Gateway Protocol. And it sounds really boring, but it is. I mean, if you think about it, how packets get around the internet. But what you can do with it is not boring, as is most of the things with IT. And what you can do with it, and this has happened a couple of times now, is if you are a internet service provider of some sort, if specifically if you've been provided by an AS number by whoever provides the AS numbers in your jurisdiction, which is a little wheezier than I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
If you define a more specific path to get to something like, say, Google, you can tell the rest of the internet to send that traffic your way, no matter who you are. And so a couple of things that have popped up in the media recently that you might have seen is this what do we call the bit canal? Bit canal.
Oh,
yeah.
Yep.
The hijack factory. And Bit Canal were one of the first people to actually get thrown off the internet for doing this. So they had been directing traffic into like finding unused places on the internet and using those places to send spam. So they would say, "Hey, internet, do you know that space over there that Google's not using? That's really us. Send some traffic there, and we're going to send email from those places." And they started selling those to spammers. It wasn't until it wound up on a news group, a discussion amongst network operators, that got shut down. The other place this has shown up is that it turns out, not the Russians, although the Russians have the ability to do this too, but China has pieces of the internet that they may do the same sort of trick with. So they might have an entire bunch of the internet, just start going to them for a little while, and then going on. And I'm wondering if you are part of the conversation to like stop these sorts of things from going on, and what that looks like from the backside of, the curtain, as it were.
First, it is significantly above my pay grade, of course. But there's an interesting history of misadvertised ASs among, what I would consider to be like CLECs, competitive local exchange carriers, who act as internet service providers, where, as you arrange these peering agreements, oftentimes you'll experience incidents where a peer will intentionally or unintentionally, I would say 99.9% of the time in my experience and in the past, as I've seen it just at Signal, it's unintentional. This is a mistake. Someone has misadvertised either a subnet, or a network within an AS, or misadvertised their AS. The goal of what's being described here is subterfuge. It's placing themselves as possible for man-in-the-middle attacks. It gives them, access to this huge chunk of egress and egress traffic. But very often when people misadvertise, it causes chaos. Like, it's an immediate, everyone knows, because, for instance, if someone were to, without the appropriate infrastructure, route the traffic intended for Facebook to themselves, they would immediately nuke their peer port, and then that would just be it.
So they would get this flood of Facebook traffic coming their way.
Precisely, which is what makes this so scary, because that means that someone intentionally said, okay, let's develop the infrastructure capable of handling traffic that, this massive company has intended to flow to them, and then let's intentionally peel off portions of that traffic and do whatever it is that we intend to do with it, whether it's, sort of absconding with the network space and using it, to sell pop-up shop scammers, legitimate network space from which to spam so they can get around, known block sites or blacklists, or whether they're doing it to perform man-in-the-middle attacks or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of intentionality there that isn't just malicious code. There's like legit infrastructure behind it that is huge.
So basically, if China, or in some cases Russia, wanted to redirect Facebook or Google or something to them, step one, have enough infrastructure to handle the amount of traffic that they're going to get, or it's going to be perfectly obvious what they're up to.
Precisely. Yeah. And I mean, the first space that, it's funny, I think, in the world where we're all exposed to more bandwidth than we grew up with, maybe, we're somewhat accepting of slower loading pages, but if something loads, I think there are even numbers that are around this. There have been studies of, what number it is that we kind of wait and we go, nope, and we just close the browser tab, and, we were going to go to Facebook, we go to Twitter instead, or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. So the people who are hijacking these spaces are taking that into account. They're aware of the fact that their hijack will not work if they don't deliver at least a semi-commensurate experience for the user. And if they can't get the user to point their traffic there, then what's the point of doing all of it anyways?
So if I'm just a normal person which I typically describe myself as a normal person.
We let you describe yourself.
Okay,
like
thank
that.
you. Thank you for allowing that. And I go to google.com, and somehow this BGP has been hijacked, and instead of going to the actual Google servers where that page comes up, I'm actually going to a place that is not Google but is made to look like Google, and it's somehow intercepting that traffic that I'm putting in. And if that occurs, any information that I say, type in like my Google password and such, is then totally knowable to whoever has hijacked that traffic. Is that sort of fair?
There are two ways kind of that you can think of it. So the first way, and one of the ways that, again, I've just given this a cursory glance. I think I read this article just, really briefly. But
Noah, we should start prepping our guests and telling them what we're going to talk about.
but
Put that on the to-do.
But I would say that the two most, I think, immediately obvious ways that they would hurt you as just sort of a regular person, say you're using your phone to access like a G Suite app, were your traffic hijacked, there would be two ways that they would use that. So the first way would be a pass-through as a man in the middle, and the idea behind that is that you hand them some piece of sensitive information that they want, and that you would normally just provide directly to Google, and then they have that. And then they just, they let your traffic pass through, but they've captured that. Now, I'm kind of floating a little bit above how that would work technically, but that is one way. So where you would receive, the experience of working with the G Suite, just you may have handed your traffic would have routed through a malicious actor, and they could do whatever it is they were going to do. You often see man-in-the-middle attacks with like public Wi-Fi, where someone will spoof an access point and things like that. But then the other way is, like you described, there's sort of it's a fake site. It looks normal, and what that will often do is, so this is just an example. You see a visual experience that you immediately think, oh, this is Facebook, or this is Google, or this is whatever site that is, but your password doesn't work. And you know that this is your password, but then you get a password reset. The password reset doesn't work, but the first thing that they do is, now that they've gotten you to type your password about 4 or 5 different times, is they then just forward you back on over to Google or Facebook, the actual site. And they've captured this data from you. So they have your username, they have your password. They've probably gotten you to provide them with some kind of like spoof 2-factor, so now they've got your phone number, and now they can start using that data. So that invalidates some of the security protections that are in place. Now, I know that's a little bit far afield. That takes a lot.
Sure.
In some of these instances, it may look like they're just doing it to prove that they could do it, stretch the legs on the infrastructure a little bit. We don't know, and nothing that I've read thus far kind of indicates that this is happening to everyday consumers, but who knows? Yeah,
that's what I was going to mention. And, Drew obviously knows way more about this than I do, as I am a normal person. And Drew is not a normal person.
As an abnormal person, I appreciate that.
But I wouldn't imagine that the normal person, China in particular, is necessarily concerned with. It's more perhaps United States infrastructure, power grids. I don't know, but
from
perhaps
what we know about what China's into, it does impact some of the normal people, particularly around here. There was a story recently about how they hijacked the blueprints for a very fancy jet engine, and people make those kind of things around here. You might not use these, go to these particular lengths for Noah's password, but one of the engineers down the road who's making parts for, pick your major auto manufacturer, pick your, there's a place that makes airplanes in town, airplane parts and systems for missiles. And you might care enough to pull a little hijink like this to pretend to be their infrastructure to get into their networks. A lot of times you can get a person's username and password just by asking. There's that great Jimmy Kimmel clip where they just walk down the street and ask people, like, so what's your password? But, you can make a pretty strong argument that the course of the last election was changed because somebody responded to an email.
Of course,
Where you could make money on a trick like this. And I wouldn't put this past North Korea, because North Korea has been doing a lot of hacking for hire. In fact, it is not unfair to say that like most of the money, a good portion of the money on the blockchain in Bitcoin is basically North Korea's at this point. The which sounds a little paranoid, but we can go into that later. But there was a bank that had just its DNS hijacked, Brazilian, about first part of 2007, if memory serves. And they basically became that bank for the better part of a day while they scrambled around and, called their internet service provider and said, wait, that's not our website you're going to. Can we fix this? And, between noticing and getting it fixed, a lot of money disappeared. That sort of attack could be possible. If it was the Russians, they have demonstrated in the past their ability to get into power infrastructure. They demonstrated in Ukraine by hitting the light switch on a couple of places before their physical attacks started. So you might wonder what they would do. Say you wanted to influence an election and you knew that there were 4 voting places that needed to be taken care of. If you turn the lights off on them, or you reroute traffic to them, or you tell everybody that the election's in 7 days when it's in 6 days, which I understand has happened recently. Those kind of shenanigans can be effective. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and the answer may be not at all. There's this whole class of, this is being taped right after Halloween on All Saints Day itself.
Indeed.
And so there are some very spooky bugs in the Intel processors, and everybody's got Intel processors in their computers, and especially people who provide platform as a service. And so they're ghostly names. There's I guess Meltdown isn't particularly ghostly, isn't it? But there is a bug called Spectre.
Yes.
And basically, these take advantage of the trick we do on processors to make them go faster, of figuring out both sides of a decision. So if there's a piece of code that says, if it's a 1, do this, and if it's a 0, do that, the processor is so much faster than the humans, it figures out the answer to both of those questions. And because of that, there's these vulnerabilities that maybe you can listen to some of that traffic through side channels. And so basically that process, which is called speculative execution, means that a lot of the progress we've made in making processors faster inherently causes these kind of bugs. And the way this impacts your business, as I understand it, is that by applying the patches to fix that, at least the first round of patches, basically just shut that off. They're we're just, speculative execution bad. We're going to turn that off, because what it would potentially allow somebody to do is, if I'm on the same network as Noah and his website is running on the same server as my website, because it's cost effective to do that, I might be able to listen to what his web server's doing. And if his web server's doing stuff with credit card numbers or stuff with bank accounts, now we got problems. So have you guys been impacted by that? And if so, how?
So we were fortunate. We are fortunate to have a very responsive engineering and incident response team and security team. So whether it's Spectre or any other infrastructure or network related hardware specific bug, because these happen, the first thing we do is one of the reasons, and this is not to digress too much here, diverge too much. One of the reasons people move to infrastructure providers like US Signal is that they want to work with someone who will take care of things like this for them, right? So for the normal person, for a lot of traditional IT shops over the last decade, they've been having to make some tough decisions about, their IT complexity has grown immensely, right? So it used to be that it was literally a desktop that sat underneath the secretary's front desk, and that was the 2003 SBS server. So it was a small business server. So that was your domain controller. It was your Exchange server. It was your data, it was your Access database. It was even your application host. People would use it as a remote application host. So it did everything, and that was just one little desktop. Well, now 15 years later, the guys who came in and sold you pizza boxes, you've got a closet full of networking gear. You've got a DMARC, a proper DMARC instead of just an AT&T modem. You've got a proper DMARC. You've got real network connectivity, but then you've got what amounts to a small data center. And so you've got a full storage array. You've got a rack full of servers that you had to hire a kid to manage. He went off to college, and now you're kind of stuck with it.
I was that kid.
So was I. And the next thing you knew, you basically had a small data center. Next thing you know, you got HVAC issues. Next thing you know, it's been brought to your attention that your offices are next to the Grand River, and you're in a floodplain. And despite the fact that you moved all of your infrastructure to the second floor, your generator's on the ground. And you start going, I can't do this. This is too much. And then the next thing you know is you see something like Spectre, but you don't read it on the 0-day blogs. You don't get it on, sort of on weird
Where
NetSec
nerds
Twitter.
Like me hang out.
Yeah, exactly. Like NetSec Twitter. You didn't catch. You caught it in CNET. In print, you caught it like in print in like Computer World or something, like 6 months later, and you go, am I vulnerable to this? And you scramble. And the thing is that there's no like immediate guide. Everybody just says like, well, reach out to your vendor. You haven't had support. Your boxes went EOL, end of life, like 5 years ago. You don't even have the phone number for the guy who sold it to you. And so that's where companies like US Signal come in. So for us, it's sort of a non-answer. Like, yes, we did pay attention to it. Yes, we do pay attention to all of these. Heartbleed was a big one for us. That was...
I had to redesign my web server class to allow students to watch that because we use Apache, and they were all completely vulnerable to it.
Oh yeah, that was because that wasn't just us. That was reaching out to our customers, who might have been affected by that. And so whether it's Spectre, whether it's Heartbleed, for us with Spectre, it was reach out to our vendors. We're a UCS shop, Cisco Unified Compute System shop. So we work with our vendors. We worked with our security team, and then we this is the industry boring language. Like, we implemented appropriate action. We did what we had to get around it, but I think our customers were better off for that because we moved quickly, we moved decisively, and we communicated clearly with them. Whereas I think a lot of folks who really did get hit by this were shops where they were unprepared to deal with that as quickly. They weren't catching it on 0-day. So that's one of the things. And I'm not just kind of, this isn't just US Signal specific. A lot of providers
This podcast episode is sponsored by US Signal.
Brought to you by US Signal. Get 50% off your first infrastructure as a service month using the promo code ROSAMA. That's promo code ROSAMA.
Jim's going to just the promo code Jim's getting yelled at when he gets back to the office. No, not at all.
Well, so specifically what I asked about Meltdown and Spectre was that those patches, when you turned off the power of speculative execution, there was SolarWinds, who is they monitor log files and stuff, reported that some types of services jumped as much as 25% utilization, which is like a big jump. And if I'm paying by the CPU cycle, now I'm buying 125 CPU cycles where I used to be buying 100. And
so how cool are you with me just making this a US Signal advertisement? Because
we're over time, so we're gonna have to cut something anyway. But go for it.
No. But the truth is when you're picking an IaaS provider, that infrastructure as a service provider, and you have questions about paying by the drink per clock cycle, we do it by vCPU. So
I've bought the whole CPU.
Yeah,
no matter how many clock cycles it makes.
You have a pool of capacity. So if you were impacted by that, and that was something, we would work with the customer to talk about, what can we do to mitigate that cost if that it really is that. But in most shops, they're oversubscribed anyways. So you just kind of play with reservation shares and limits. Boy, I'm getting into the weeds. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to say, as a normal person, again, I love that these vulnerabilities have logos. It's
Some
amazing.
Of them have jingles, and the Spectre one was officially brought to you by the James Bond Spectre.
Is that?
That's not true.
No, they didn't. I thought they would have made a martini for all the admins.
If you just Google Spectre bug or Heartbleed bug, you'll see these logos, and they're just amazing. I mean, it seems that these logos are created probably for awareness, so that the public.
Well, so if you want a little bit of the sausage making there, so I'm a security researcher and I want to make a big to-do about this find I've got. The way you do that before you disclose the bug is you call up your graphic designer and you reserve a web page.
Yep.
And then you get the logo and you put it all together and you call the guys who are taking CFPs at Black Hat and DEF CON, call for a paper or presentation, and then say, hey, I've got this great bug. And you just look at the website beforehand. So it is certainly marketing.
Yeah, it's cool. The Spectre is just this little blue, cute little ghost guy who's a little angry. And then the Heartbleed is a heart bleeding. But yeah,
it just looks like an emo band's
cover of the album.
Yeah.
Actually, the background would be black if that were the case.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, fun fact about Heartbleed. There was some speculation that perhaps the NSA knew about this for a long time before they bothered to before it got discovered.
I read that.
Yeah, it's NetSec Twitter is back and forth on it as to whether that's legit or not. But it was proposed that our government may have known about that for a long while and been using it to learn things. But NSA says no.
Would they ever?
Would they say yes? I don't know if they. At least they didn't say we can neither confirm nor deny that.
Yeah, that's true.
Full disclosure, I am currently working on an NSA funded grant, so
which is why we believe everything they've ever said.
Kind of an employee.
Hopefully they're not listening.
I'm sure they are.
What's up, NSA?
They've got that data center that reviews everything. All right. Well, we have gone way over our normally allotted 15 minutes, and Noah keeps turning on his phone to let me know.
15 minutes. I'm so sorry, you guys. I think I talked about myself for most of that.
That's fine. It's good stuff. We haven't really officially settled on that.
Yeah, I think as long as the conversation's good, we'll just keep rolling.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming out. Is there any if this gets out to more than 7 people, you might want them to know how to find you. Do you advertise a Twitter account or a LinkedIn's or any of those things you'd want to share?
I am on Big Kid Facebook, so I'm on LinkedIn, and I am on Twitter at JC Schuyler, last name spelled Schuyler.
Yeah, I'd have immediately said Schuyler if I saw that too.
That's me. And I like to talk a lot about business continuity, disaster recovery, and IT resiliency. That's my specific nerddom.
So hot.
I know, it's so cool.
Defeasible Reasoning is produced at the Epic Studios of Grand Rapids Community College Media Technologies Department. Epically executive produced by Noah D. Smith and hosted by me, Drew Roseman.